And we are live with episode 128 of the Start Build Grow Show. What is up, everybody? Like I said, episode 128 of the Start Build Grow Show. And once again, we got a fantastic guest. Unfortunately, Randy Brothers will not be joining us today. He is sick, so he is laying in bed getting his rest. So, Randy, if you're out there, if you're listening to this later, man, feel better. But like I said, guys, don't worry. We got it covered. We got another fantastic guest in the house that we are extremely excited about. We got Dylan McCabe with Limitless Roofing CEO Groups. Dylan, what's up, man? How we doing?
Hey, man, thanks for having me on the show. I'm a little humbled by that awesome video intro you got going on.
Hey, we've been doing this for over 2 years. We're getting a few things right by now, right? Finally, just getting there. But, man, no, we're extremely excited to have you. You know, we were able to connect actually at RoofCon, so that was really cool. You know, we were out in Houston, Texas. We connected. I know you're living out in Dallas. So what we always like to start the podcast with is actually, you know, the story, the background, and stuff like that, man. So, Dylan, what's your background, and how did roofing find you?
Yeah, no, it's great. I appreciate that question. Roofing really found me in Dallas here. I've been in a leadership role, several different organizations, entrepreneurial companies, everything from healthcare to digital marketing. And I was in a position of transition almost a year ago, and a good buddy of mine owns a roofing company in Dallas called Raintight General Contracting. And I approached him and I said, "Hey, man, I'm putting my feelers out there. I'm kind of looking at different options, and your wife and my wife are really good friends, and I don't want to jack with that at all, but I want to get your honest feedback. What would it look like to work together? You know, what's your company looking like? Are you trying to grow this and that and the other?" And long story short, man, I started working with Miller, the owner of Raintight General Contracting, and that got me started in roofing. That was about a year ago.
Very cool. So what are you thinking in the roofing space so far?
It's great, man. You know, the thing I like about roofing as a business model is it's a pretty simple model. You know, you're really selling one thing. Obviously, there's multiple components, but you're selling a roof as a general contractor, typically, at least in Dallas. I mean, we're in the storm restoration business mostly. And I also like the relationship part of it. You know, I was part of a healthcare software company before for a couple of years, and we sold really expensive enterprise level software, and we did consulting for healthcare companies that were doing hundreds of millions a year in revenue, but there was very little relationship. Mm-hmm. And the thing I like about this business is the relationship goes way beyond the transactional. You get to meet with the homeowner, you get to talk with them, you get to know them a little bit. I mean, I've had moments where I've said, "Hey, I know you're going through a stressful situation. Can I pray for you?" I mean, it's a much more relational business, and I love that part of it.
100%. And, you know, for me, you know, when I started Summa Media, you know, this was about 3.5 years ago, I was planning to work with just contractors in general. That was kind of the game plan, you know, and roofing found me. You know, I got connected with Randy and the Roofing Academy. We started to grow that together, and, you know, here we are now. And the relationships too, just internally in the space, man, has just been unbelievable. You go to some of these conferences and the connections and how willing everybody is to share information, you know, their secret sauce and kind of give it away and network. It's a really cool thing to see that I really did not expect to see in the roofing space. So that's been awesome, man. So today, Dylan, we're going to be talking about how business owners can shift from urgent to strategic practices for sustainable success with their roofing company. Now, why is this topic kind of so important to you?
Yeah, so when I got into roofing, you know, I've hosted a few different podcasts over the years, and I quickly saw an opportunity to interview owners and CEOs of roofing companies just to hear their stories, like you guys are doing, hear their stories, and everybody listening can just glean wisdom and insight from those stories. But as I'm interviewing guests and getting to know people by going to conferences and talking to owners one-on-one, I really started to notice just a lack of business training, whereas the previous businesses I've been in, you know, like consulting and for healthcare companies, all of the owners of these companies either had MBA degrees, or they had a partner who had an MBA degree, or whatever. A lot of business acumen, and there was hundreds of millions of dollars being managed, and just the skill level of business was really solid. And so
Yeah.
I noticed in the roofing space, you also have guys that are very skilled, but a lot of it's been learned through the school of hard knocks, going from a sales guy a lot of times to, you got this really good sales guy and he's thinking, and I could probably do this pretty well by myself and start my own thing. And then you've got a sales guy to go start a company, and he has this dream of making money, have more family time. He has this dream in his head of what he wants to achieve, and then quickly realizes there's a big gap between who I am right now and that dream. And there's a lot of skills and experience lacking that are keeping me from getting there. I don't know how to be the CEO of a company. I
Yeah.
don't know how to develop processes that are rock solid. I don't know the right way to hire and develop and fire people. I don't know how to keep score. I don't know how to
Yeah.
run meetings. I don't know how to do strategic annual planning and quarterly goals and all this stuff. And so that's what we're passionate about, is getting people to shift from the urgent, which is just going day to day. Let's just grind it out. Let's just sell more, which is a very urgent present mindset. Shift from that to strategic. Start with the end in mind, like Stephen Covey says in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and actually get there. And so that's what we're excited about, is helping people in a context of a roofing CEO group where they can talk with other owners of companies and get solid feedback to get that experience and build those skills they need to really build a sustainable company. Because we
Mm-hmm.
hear a lot of guys that have years where, oh, I did 2 million this year, and then I did 5 million last year, and I think I'm going to do about 2 million next year. And it's just so variable, which is scary. And so that's a very urgent mindset or urgent situation where you're just constantly dealing with the urgent and you're not being very strategic.
Mm-hmm. No, and I love what you guys are doing with Limitless Roofing CEO Group, because if you think about, I mean, I think this way all the time. Whenever I feel overwhelmed or I feel like I'm trying to level up my company, I'm like, man, it would be so nice to have like-minded individuals in the marketing space that I could kind of lean on or have discussions with, or just talk about our problems, our wins, whatever it might be. Just to have someone in the same boat as you that you could have those talks with, because they're the only ones that can really understand what you're going through to the level that you do, right? And so tell us a little bit more about these CEO groups and how people can kind of get involved.
Yeah, so it was really born out of, after interviewing a lot of guests and asking them, we all stand on the shoulders of others. And I know you can point to, and I can point to people throughout the last 5-10 years of my life that, because of my relationship with this business person, they really spoke into my life, gave me some advice, gave me some
Mm-hmm.
direction that really set me on a new course. And it made all the difference. And also, guys that go to conferences, a lot of times they'll say, the best thing I got out of that conference was when I got to sit with 3 or 4 other owners and ask them, hey, how do you just crush it with production? We have constant problems. Or, hey, how do you deal with hiring and firing and training sales guys? It's a constant headache of ours. And just getting that peer feedback. So I started hearing stuff like that. But the big thing for me that was a light bulb moment is my business mentor is a guy in Dallas. I won't mention his name because he's kind of well known. He had a big company, an international company that he had a great exit from 12 years ago. But he's a guy who I admire. I admire not only his business acumen, but I admire the way he looks at family. I admire the way he looks at faith. And he started a nonprofit called Shine. And Shine is a situation. It's mostly Christian nonprofits that attend these meetings. But basically what it is if you go to a Shine meeting, you could be the CEO of a nonprofit. Let's say you're building orphanages in India or something. You go say, look, I want to build 20 orphanages next year, but here's my biggest challenge. And so what my mentor would do is he would invite you to a meeting with at least 30 other people that he has handpicked that he thinks would be able to shine on that situation with their knowledge and their experience for 2 hours. He'd cater the lunch, and everybody would just give amazing feedback, and relationships would come out of it too. And he's had over 5,000 of these meetings in the last 10 years. And
Wow.
so I was driving home from work one day and I'm thinking, man, we need to create a Shine-like experience for owners of roofing companies. And instead of them getting this feedback from a few people a few times a year at a conference, get it every month, put it in a structured format where we go through the 6 key areas of your business over the course of a year with a lot of content, templates, all kinds of stuff through the EOS worldwide system that we use. And let everybody shine, let everybody learn, let everybody get feedback. And that's what it's all about, man. It's about just having that remarkable experience to where you're not a lone soldier on the battlefield of leadership. You're running with a crew, you're running with the SEAL team, and you guys are conquering missions together.
I love that. I mean, no matter what you're doing in business and life, you need to continue education. You need to surround yourself with like-minded individuals, right? Continue to grow, and also just take a breath to analyze where you're at. I think some people could go a whole year without really taking a second to analyze how things are going and why they're going that way, which kind of brings me to my next point, right? So how can these roofing business owners who, sometimes, like you're saying, they just go from sales to owner, right? And now they got a list of a million things to do, right? And all of a sudden there's fire here, and they're just like, oh my gosh, I am overwhelmed, right? So how can these guys go from, that reactive mindset to everything that's going on to more of a proactive approach?
Yeah, I think you've got to have a dashboard or some kind of operating system you use. And I'm not talking about a CRM. You've got to have some framework that you use as a leader of how you structure your company, how you plan for success in your business, and how you execute that plan. And a lot of guys, if you've never had an MBA degree or had a lot of solid business training or leadership training, you don't get this stuff unless you've been mentored by somebody that's really done a good job of teaching it to you. You don't get this stuff anywhere. So the way we teach, and I'm an authorized EOS implementer, and EOS Worldwide is a system used by over 80,000 business owners around the world. But basically, it breaks down your business into 6 key components. And that's vision, people, issues, data, process, and traction. So basically, out of those 130 issues you deal with as the owner of a company, you can distill all those down to really 6 key areas. And the first one is vision, and that has to do with planning. And so we go through in our group and we ask our members, we give them templates and a workbook, a really hefty binder that they have to work through in our groups. But the first thing is what's your vision? And vision is really 8 key questions. And we go through those 8 questions. And one of them is, what's your 10-year plan? It's like that big, hairy, audacious goal. If you could have what you wanted 10 years from now, and you could say 5 years from now, if that makes it easier. But if you could have things the way you wanted, what would your company look like in 10 years? Okay, let's bring it down to the ground a little bit. The next question is, what's your 3-year picture? Let's make it more realistic. If things could go the way you wanted, how many employees would you have? How many sales guys? What would be your annual revenue? What would your profit margins be like? What are 7 to 10 very clear measurables that we can set in place to get you there? And then the next question is, what's your annual goal? This is, what are you responsible for in the next 12 months? And we drill that down. We actually have a free tool. I'm happy to give it to anybody listening to this now. It's called the Vision Traction Organizer. It's a 2-page template for clarifying your vision. Then the next question is, what are your 90-day goals? We call them rocks. These are rock solid things that you're responsible for in the next 90 days. And everybody is assigned a rock. One of the questions we ask are, what are your core values? Another one's, what's your core focus? And the last one's, what's your marketing strategy? So we get laser focused on vision. We clear the fog. So this is polar opposite end of the spectrum of, I'm going to grow to a $5 million a year company. That's great. How are you going to do it?
Yep.
Let's discuss the gap between where you are today, where you want to be. Let's clarify how you're going to get there, put it on paper, and then hold each other accountable once a month.
I love that. I mean, for me, there's a quote that I love, is your vision needs to be so clear. All you need to do is wake up in the morning and walk into that vision, right? So I love that. Not enough people write out the vision of where they're trying to go. If you don't have a destination where you're trying to go, what are your odds of getting there? Not very high, right? So if you write out all this stuff, right? So you do this workbook, you write down your vision, right? You wrote down the 10-year vision, that 3-year vision. Then how often are you going back and kind of looking at the visions that you wrote down?
So our members look at their VTO once a week. We have something that they practice called level 10 meetings. If you were to rate the effectiveness of your weekly meetings in your business, how would you rate them on a scale of 1 to 10? We give you the tools to develop what we call a level 10 meeting. We also have a template for that. But they use their vision traction organizer every week to align their team around that vision and to track how things are going on a weekly and quarterly basis. Because you got that 1 year goal, but you have to keep score and track it to make sure you're actually going to get there. And so it's a very effective way to keep your hand on the pulse of how the company's doing.
Mm-hmm. And so you think once you kind of dial in that vision, does that help the business owner then kind of avoid those fires, do you think? Or do you think you have to go even further to avoid those fires? Because I feel like it's almost like a bad habit that you kind of have to like break, right? You're so used to, as soon as someone calls you or emails you saying, hey, this happened, that you have to immediately go do that. Is there a good way to avoid that? Or do you think that vision is going to help us enough to do so?
Yeah, so developing that vision is key. Every great leader has a clear vision.
Yep.
But that's where we get into the other 6 key components of the business. And one of those is people, and the other one is issues. So great leaders are really good at aligning themselves with good people. But I've heard 2 times in the last week from owners of roofing companies around the US that said, I'm so tired of having stressful issues with sales guys. And so I'm immediately thinking, I know you don't know how to hire the right people, and you don't know how to train them, and you don't even know how to clarify who the right person is. And it's not about their ability to sell. Like, that's the easy part. It should be easy to check that box. So one of the things we go into is, what are your core values? You should be able to really clearly define at least 5 to 7 crystal clear core values that make up your company, who you guys are, why you exist. Then you hire, reward, review, and fire around those core values. Because in the people component that we take our members through, you got to have the right people in the right seats. Well, the right person is somebody who aligns with your core values. And I've heard many stories. You get this rock star sales guy, so you got somebody in the right seat, but they become the wrong person because they don't align with your core values as the leader or the owner of your company. And now you're butting heads with that sales guy, and you're dealing with a strong personality. And sometimes you're dealing with somebody who's, behind your back or even in front of you, kind of going against your leadership. So now you got the wrong person in the right seat. You want to have the right people in the right seat. The right person that's going to align with your core values. And you should also be able to develop an environment where people can have healthy, open discussion, not unhealthy open discussion. And you also don't want a situation where people are afraid to speak up because they fear retribution. So it's all about having the right people in the right seats. And that's something that I think you mentioned was, how do you put out those fires? Another key component is issues. Do you know how to identify the key issues in your company and discuss them and solve them? It's something we call IDS, and that happens in those weekly level 10 meetings. Most companies just discuss. They don't identify that repeat issue that keeps coming up. That's just the tip of the iceberg. The real issue is lower. You may have the right person, but they may be in the wrong seat. So you're giving them something to do, but it's really not in line with their unique abilities. So they're constantly screwing up. Or maybe you have the wrong person and they're in the right seat. But either way, you spend 60 minutes a week identifying, discussing, and then solving those issues. You find out what the root cause is, you deal with it, and put it behind you forever.
Yeah, 100%. And I liked what you were saying too with, hey, maybe you're not hiring the right people, right? And stuff like that. I think that's probably one of the biggest issues that I hear day in, day out is maybe they're hiring too quick, actually. Lack of training, right? Causing high turnover. But usually the business owner will say, I can't find the right people. Right. So I think that's a huge one. So another talking point that I want to dive into was learning how to communicate. I think this is a very, very crucial one, right? Getting everybody on the same page, communication. So let's dive into that, Dylan.
Yeah. So another part of that vision traction organizer, if you have a clear vision, and part of that is what's your core focus, and out of that core focus, you clearly define your purpose, cause, or passion as a company. You clearly define who your company is and why, and you get everybody on your team on board with that, and it starts to become a part of the DNA of the company. But as a leader, you've got to be communicating that. There's a story I like to tell about a guy. It's in a book. I'm actually going to do a podcast on this. But this happened back in the 70s, and this guy was like an expert firefighter. And
Hmm.
so anytime there was a big fire on a, that would make national news, a wildfire, they'd bring this guy in. And he was amazing. He'd even learned secret techniques from Native Americans on how to deal with wildfires and stuff like that. Well, there's this awful real life story that occurred with him, and it took place in a place called Man Gulch, and all of the elements were perfect for a wildfire that was out of control. And he had a team of about 10 guys that were with him. Only two of them had worked with him before. Most of them had never worked with him. And a couple of them, this was their first wildfire. Long story short, almost everybody died. He didn't, but he was a terrible communicator. And at one point in the fire, they were actually in a plane, and the fire was rushing across the plane faster than they could run. And he actually knelt down and lit a fire right there. And he started motioning to the other guys to run to him, and they didn't know what the heck he was doing. They were all riddled with
Hmm.
fear at this point, and they just started running up a hill where there was a lot of rocks, and they thought that would get them away from the fire. Well, they didn't realize he was using a Native American technique that you light a fire and it creates a huge burn circle around you, so that as that wall of fire is coming toward you, it has nothing to jump onto, and it just
Wow.
goes around you, right? So he survived, and almost everybody else burned alive. So when he was being reviewed by the Supreme Court, they had to find out, is he guilty or not? Is he culpable of their deaths? And if he would have been a good communicator, if he would have been somebody who invested in learning how to communicate and focused on equipping others instead of just leading because he knows what's best,
Hmm.
he could have saved everybody's life. And I talked to a lot of guys. I've taken multiple communication classes because I love public speaking and stuff like that. But I talked to a lot of guys that think, I've told you this once, that's it, or watch me, I'm doing it. You don't realize what's in your brain, it's not coming across. So you've got to learn how to relate. You've got to learn how to connect. You've got to learn how to be clear, concise, and compelling. Be
Hmm.
really clear about what you expect of people. Be concise. Don't say it in 30 minutes.
Hmm.
Be able to say it in a few minutes, and be compelling. Show them that what's at stake. Hey, man, if you do this well, you're going to be on track in this way. If you don't do this well, here's how it's going to burn you and me as the owner. Be clear, concise, and compelling in everything you communicate.
Hmm. Do you guys dive into that to be how to improve your communication skills? Because I can even feel, right? All these topics are just, they're business topics, right? That are getting brought into the roofing space because there's a lack of education on business strategies, right? And fundamentals. But I can even feel it, right? When I'm talking to my team and I get frustrated because they didn't understand something, I take a second, an hour later, and I look into it and I'm like, dang, I probably could have done a better job trying to get my point across there, right? Do you guys kind of dive into how to improve then as a communicator?
Yeah, we do. And we refer people, we're not the silver bullet. Our big focus
Mm-hmm.
is enabling you to structure a business, develop it at minimum a 5-year business plan, a clear 3-year picture, and an annual plan, and to give you the tools and the framework in the group of a CEO peer group to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also amazing resources like Donald Miller has a company called Business Made Simple. He's got the story brand framework. Well, one of the things he's got inside that course is communication made simple. And
Yep.
so we'll refer people to stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes through just that one-on-one interaction with guys. If I get the sense that they're really long-winded and impatient with people, man, that's a bad combo. You need to learn how to have a good volley. When you're talking with somebody, it should be like a game of tennis. You say something, they say something. You ask a question, they respond and ask a question. And I run across a lot of guys, man, they're really good at talking, but they're not good at listening. And there's a reason, there's one of the verses in the Bible I remember the most. It says, be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Be a good listener. And it's something that Stephen Covey, and again in that book, obviously it impacted me a lot. But that book, Seek First to Understand, Then Be Understood. I mean, that's so powerful. And I think
Mm-hmm.
so many leaders make so many mistakes because they just don't take the time to understand first and ask good questions. That's the
Mm-hmm.
key to communication right there, is asking great questions.
Listening is not easy, right? It's a skill that I think we can all work on, and it's so important. You hear that we listen to respond rather than listen to understand, and when you're doing that, right? When you're in a conversation with somebody, and in the top of your head, you're already thinking about what you're going to say before the person even finishes their statement, right? So improving in listening can make such a big impact, and then also, I think that your employees feel so much more valued when you actually give them the time of day, slow down for a second, and listen to them, right? I think it goes such a long way. So I love this topic, right? And it's great. I feel like it's a topic that we bring up on the show very often, but everybody's got a little bit of a different approach to it, or they've learned it from different resources or different mentors or books or whatever it might be. As leadership, as how to develop as a leader, something that's so important. Now, how do you think leaders don't get stagnant in that and just continue to make a commitment to leadership? And then how can you kind of be aware enough to grade something like that, I guess, because grading that can probably be rather important to improving on it.
I'm a big fan of mentorship, or having at least people in your corner that you can go to. I've got a few different guys I call. I've got one guy I call that I like to get a lot of really good family advice from. He's a solid business guy in Dallas, lives in one of the most affluent neighborhoods in Dallas, but I just love the way he's grown his business over the years. And I really love the way I hear him talk about his kids. And we have dinner at least once a month, and we just catch up. And he asks me, how's it going? How's it going, bro? How's your marriage? How are the girls? How are your daughters? How's being a dad? And I am open with him. I'll be like, man, I got to tell you, I'm struggling lately with, I get too focused on work, and then I get home and I've been a little impatient with my girls, and I'm not having as much fun with them as I should. And I'm open with him, and he asks me real hard issues, like, why do you think that is? And so it all comes through relationships. And going back to the roofing CEO group thing, when you're in that context, you have to, our two major prerequisites are, you've got to be a learner and you've got to be growth minded. And when I say learner, what I mean is you've got to be dedicated to your own development as a leader, and there's no chest pounding. I don't care what your top line revenue in your company is. There are always areas to improve as a leader, meaning somebody who develops others, because you can crush it in business and absolutely fail at the rest of life. And that's not effective leadership. You can crush it in business and lose your marriage and your kids in the process. You made an A in business and an F in the rest of your life. And so in our CEO groups, that's another thing we discuss is, hey, how's your family? How's your relationships? Because if you're a leader, you have solid relationships. And so I think that's what it takes. I think it takes being dedicated to your own character and also the quality of your relationships. And for a lot of guys, that's the harder part. They can get real focused on business, but man, you've got to be focused on your own character too, because your character is the number one limiting factor in your effectiveness as a leader. Everything can grow and it can all crumble if your character is not there.
Do you think you can get feedback from your employees? Is that a decent process to try too? Or because it's interesting as a leader, right? You're grading different people, you're giving reviews to other people, who's giving you your review? Is it kind of, would you say it's more than the mentor type position that you kind of just said before?
Yeah, I think getting feedback from other peers, I think you at least need a few guys around you, or gals around you, if you're a female, that you can be open and honest with, and that you can get honest feedback from. But one of the stories I tell at the outset of any new CEO group, our groups are limited at 10 members. Once it hits 10, we start a new group. But in that first kickoff meeting, I share a story of when I started doing jujitsu, or practicing jujitsu in Dallas at the gym with Carlos Machado. A lot of guys have never heard of this guy, but he's actually the cousin of the Gracie family. So him and the Gracie family made jujitsu popular.
Yeah.
All right. And this dude is a 9th degree black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he's the nicest guy. I met him multiple times, and he's a Brazilian guy, came up and shook my hand. I'm just like, holy cow. I'm like, feel like I need to take off my shoes. I'm on holy ground.
I love that though. I didn't mean to kid you up, but I love when people that you look up to or kind of admire are just like great people. When you meet them, you're like, wow, what a great experience.
Yeah. But so when you go there, before you get on the mat, there's a big sign over the doorway, and it says, leave your ego at the door. And the reason is because it doesn't matter if you've been practicing jujitsu for years. There may be some guy that's a belt or two below you that's just really talented, and you constantly spar with one another and grapple with each other, and he will submit you at some point. And you're going to feel like the biggest, most pathetic person in the room. So you got to leave your ego at the door. We're all here to learn from one another, and you need to be open to feedback. I mean, I'll tell you what, Nick, I'm thankful for the people in my life that don't think that everything I do is golden. I'm thankful for the few guys I have in my life that can say, hey, bro, I think you're off track, man. I think you need to rethink this. Okay. Well, you if you care enough about me to say that, I want to listen.
Hey, accountability is love.
Yeah. Amen.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Well, I just want to give a quick shout out. We had a couple comments down here. Rachel Iverson with Solutions for You. Great company. Rachel's awesome. She's always tuning in. Rachel, thanks for tuning in. She said great advice about communication, clear, concise, and compelling. We got Matt Collins with Collins and Son Roofing out in Arkansas. Matt, what's up, my friend? TRA member, Roofing Academy member. Guys crushing it out there. Well, I was figuring we can give a quick shout out to our sponsors. And then from there, we'll go into, starting with a blueprint and then giving people benchmarks. And then I'll tell you now ahead of the game too, Dylan. So pretty much I always end it with a golden nugget at the very end of the show that you want to leave people with. So be thinking about that as we give a quick shout out to our sponsors.
JobNimbus is a fully customizable back office solution.
Track leads, jobs, tasks from one easy-to-use software.
And with the largest ecosystem of integrated partners, if we don't do it, we have a friend who does.
Learn how the #1 back office system in roofing
can help you be efficient, be organized, be professional, and be profitable.
We love JobNimbus. If you guys are looking to check them out, go to info.jobnimbus.com/roofing-academy. All right. And then up next, our friends at Hail Trace.
If you're in the hail game, if you're working hail claims and selling roofs that have hail damage, you need to know where the hail is, how big the hail is, and when it hailed. I mean, if you're on the fence, it's a game changer.
You see that? Even when Randy's not on the show, he still manages to make an appearance. So, Randy, thanks for joining us. And then, of course, if you guys are interested in learning more about Hail Trace, which is awesome tool, go to hailtrace.com. And then lastly, our friends at Sumo Quote. So Sumo Quote is the fastest way to build custom quotes that impress clients and win more work. You can sell faster. It saves you time writing quotes and bids so you can spend more time making money. And you can sell more. The quotes look so professional that you're going to win more and you're able to charge more. And you'll sell smarter. The custom quotes give you analytics helping you make better decisions with your proposals. So if you want to try out Sumo Quote, go to try.sumoquote.com/start, build, grow. All right, back to the show. So Dylan, like I was saying, my friend, starting with a blueprint. I know this is something that you were really pressing, and when we had a conversation prior to the show, what does this blueprint kind of look like? Does that go back to kind of the vision, or is this more process-based, or what does that blueprint look like?
So the system we use with EOS worldwide, it's created by the guy that wrote Traction. He's best-selling author Gino Wickman. He gives you kind of an overview in that book, Traction, which I highly recommend. Anybody who wants to help develop their business skills, read that book. But if you really want to implement it, you need to work with an authorized EOS implementer, whether it's me or somebody else. There's a few hundred EOS implementers around the world, but you need to work with somebody to get it implemented, because you get a lot of tools. You get a really nice tool set, and you get a great program. But when you take those 6 key components of your business, from vision to people to issues to data to process to traction, which is all about making it happen, bringing that vision down to the ground, you got to work that out, and you need somebody running alongside you to carry it out. And you have to be dedicated, knowing, hey, it's going to take me a year or 2 years to create this thing in a solid way, and then keep it going from there. But what happens if you do the hard work and you put that year in, and you put the EOS system in place that we use in our CEO groups? After that first year, the whole second year is really about just maintaining that process you've created, and you've done it as the leader of the company. You've created your process, your plan. You know who the right people in the right seats are. You have a scorecard. Everybody in your company has a score. You're measuring the right things. You know where things are at. You've got an annual plan. You're getting traction with your weekly level 10 meetings and your 90-day rocks. Things are rocking and rolling. After the second year, it's just maintaining that process. And what happens is you've got a process-driven company instead of a person-driven company. So you can go on that vacation for 2 weeks and not worry about getting 50 phone calls, because everybody is you got the right people in the right seats, and they're all rowing at the same pace in the right direction. And that's where everybody wants to be. And now you've got something that's sustainable. You can step back and it keeps going. And it's also scalable because it's process driven. So you can add to it and add to it and add to it, and everybody already knows what to do. It's easy to repeat and it's easy to keep going. And there's guys that are doing this really well. You know, I interviewed what's his face, with the owner of Avco Roofing and the founder of the Catch-All. Yeah, Heath. So I interviewed Heath. Clearly, he's done that well. I mean, scale to 8 locations and 50 sales guys. Hunter is another one that's done that really well. Hunter Ballou with RoofCon. So there's guys that have done this really well, but a lot of guys are sitting back thinking, how the heck did they do that? Well, they didn't rub the genie's lamp. They just did some things that are tried and true principles that successful entrepreneurs have done over the last 1,000 years. Yep. So that's what it's all about, is putting that system in place and then maintaining it.
I love it. I love it. And so this last one might be one of my favorites, because I think this is really interesting, and it'd be kind of difficult, right? So it's giving people benchmarks. So sales guys, I get it. Hey, you got to close this many deals. You got to hit this much in revenue, right? Whatever it might be. Marketing, hey, you got to generate this amount of leads, or whatever it might be. I get those benchmarks, right? But there's a lot of positions, though, that are kind of difficult to create benchmarks for. And I think what happens when people don't create those benchmarks is people don't know what expectations to try to hit, right? Do you have any advice just in general with creating benchmarks for employees of the company on that? So go ahead.
We do. We have something we call the People Analyzer. And that's a tool that I'm happy to give to somebody. They can just message me, and I will email it to them, and happy to teach them how to do it.
You said a couple. You said a couple resources. What's the best way to get the hands on the resources or get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way is just go to our Facebook group. It's so easy because it's all right there. It's the Limitless Roofing CEO Group in Facebook. And you can message me and say, hey, you mentioned the People Analyzer, or you mentioned the Vision Traction Organizer, or you mentioned the company scorecard. Happy to share those free tools with people. But yeah, so basically the People Analyzer is a tool that you as the owner of the company can use, and everybody in your company has a score. You not only measure the major 5 to 7 things they're responsible for that quarter, you do measure those. You also measure whether or not they exhibit your core values every single week. And you have a list of your core values, and you either have a plus, a dash for kind of no, yes, no, and then you have a minus. And you keep score on whether or not they're exhibiting your core values, and you also keep score on other key issues related to their role. And so that's something everybody in your organization has a role, and everybody has a number. And we use a People Analyzer and the company scorecard to measure that.
And then that's awesome, because people get frustrated when their employees don't perform, but sometimes they don't even have expectations laid out of what high performance looks like. So it's not really fair to say, get frustrated with, an employee for not reaching certain things if there's not really a goal or a benchmark to hit.
And so I've been there, right? I've been part of an organization before where I was an account executive and needed to set a lot of meetings before a big conference. And before the conference, man, I had 3 different dinners scheduled. I had over 30 people scheduled to attend these meetings. I felt like I was doing an amazing job. And a couple of weeks after that conference, one of the owners of the company said, I just don't know if you're in it. Like, I just need to know where your head's at. I feel like you really crush it when you get that meeting, and you're dangerous in a sales meeting, but I don't really feel like you're doing enough to get up to the plate. I'm thinking to myself, what the heck more can I do? And so I asked, can you give me something specific that you wish you saw me doing that I'm not doing? And it was hard for the owner to answer that question. But that's the problem, right? So as the owner, you need to do yourself a favor and your team a favor and have that scorecard out clear, and you get to look at it and they get to look at it. And that way they know, here's what I'm responsible for this quarter.
Yep.
And here's how it breaks down on a weekly basis. And we also have something called a 3-strike rule. Since it's so clear that everybody knows what's expected of them, when they don't do what's expected, you have a conversation. That's strike 1. And you should be able to really clearly identify the issue there. Do I have the right person in the right seat? Do I have the right person, but maybe they're in the wrong seat? I thought they'd be good for this seat, but they're not good. Anyway, you figure it out, right?
Yep.
2 weeks later, if they're still doing the same thing, you have another conversation. That's strike 2. This one gets a little more real. Hey, look, you're clearly not happy because you're not hitting the goal. We want you to be able to hit the goal too. What's going on? All right. If we have to talk about this, I think it's going to be clear that you're not, this role is not right for you. And we want you to be excited about the role, and we want to be excited about it too. And that's when strike 3 comes out, and you make that decision that they're just not a fit for your company, or maybe they're the right person, they align with your core values, but they're just not in the right seat. Hopefully you have another seat they can fill, or not. But that is a part of business.
Mm-hmm. Great insight. And I also wanted everybody to know, I put in the comments the Facebook group for Dylan's Facebook group. Also, if you're listening to the podcast, I'm going to at least just say the link. So it's just facebook.com/groups/Limitless Roofing CEO Group. So check it out there. Connect with Dylan. He mentioned a couple great resources, and I'm sure that he'll hook you up. So the last thing is the golden nugget, and Randy kind of screwed you here because usually I make him go first, right? So he's given like 125 gold nuggets, whatever it is at this point now, right? But it's just something to leave the listeners with that you just want to tell them.
Here's the golden nugget. You, as a leader of a company, you have people around you. They're going to forget 90% of what you say, but they are never going to forget what it's like to be around you. And I've got a few business leaders in my life that I really admire, because when I'm around them, they inspire me and they make me feel special. And that's a remarkable experience. And so you, as a leader, you need to be dedicated to developing yourself, to loving people well, developing your own character, your vision, your skills, but above all, your relationships and your character. When those two combine, you have commitment. And even if you mess up, people are going to follow you to the next battle because they love you and they trust you. So just don't ever forget that. People are going to forget 90% of what you say. They're never going to forget what it's like to be around you. And this is your one chance. We don't get to redo this journey on earth, as far as I know.
Do it. Love it, man. Dylan, you have been fantastic. Dylan McCabe with Limitless Roofing CEO Group. Really appreciate it. If you guys go check out that group, man, take some free resources, right? And check out what the groups are all about. Dylan, thank you so much for joining us on episode 128 of the Start Build Grow Show.
Thanks so much, Nick. It was awesome being on here with you.